everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me, as always, are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hi, Rob. It's me, Jackie McDonald.
Whoa. What a hi.
And hello, it's me, Diana Perry Cruz, joining you from the game room here in our house, which usually we call the recording studio, but just so everybody knows, it does double as our game room.
It's got, let's name some games. It's got Everdell. It's got the Jaws board game.
It's got Wingspan. It's got Catan.
Yep.
It's got a lot of games in here.
It is
It's got Parks.
2 Rock Band guitars, but they're in a guitar stand, so they look real fancy.
Mm-hmm.
And then behind us, we have shelves of role-playing game products.
Yep.
And I'm going to write them off on my taxes because this is our podcast about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research, where every week we pick a topic. And you know what? It's tax time. I got to write these things off. They're real expensive. So I don't know. You guys want to talk about tabletop role-playing games and behavior analysis or something?
Oh, all of a sudden this is an ethics episode.
JK, I didn't really write these off my taxes because I bought them too long ago. But yes, it is February when this is coming out, my birthday month. And one of the topics I was very interested in learning more about was the intersection of behavior analysis and social skill training with role-playing games, which seems to be gaining in popularity. However, is it a well-researched design methodology? Well, let's talk about it. And because it's not something that Jackie really cares about because she doesn't like games, and it's something that Diana is only tangentially willing to play, I thought, all right, I got to bring in a ringer. So fortunately, we have Danielle Yang, who has been doing work in tabletop role-playing game and behavior analysis for quite some time now. And I was very fortunate to get an email from her and her company. And I said, wow, I hope we can talk about this someday. And that is today. So Danielle, thank you so much for coming on today's show and helping me with my tax problems. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite. I'm super honored to be here. Don't put me on record as helping you with your tax problems. That's your ethical problem.
You co-sign on them. Co-sign on these taxes, quick.
But I'm so honored to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, well, it was very funny because Brian Middleton, the bearded behaviorist, had been reaching out and said, hey, is anyone interested in doing this training through Geek Therapeutics? There's a lot of websites and a lot of like companies that are sort of doing this work with how do we get role-playing games into either education or into therapeutic environments or into social skills. And it's sort of been one of those things that it's been, many years that people have sort of thought about this idea and have, sort of used it in practice. But the research base, while there are research articles on RPGs going back, Danielle, to like the 80s or the mid 80s, not exactly on this use of them. And when he reached out, I said, I would love to do more with this. This seems cool. It's nice to do it with another group of behavior analysts. It was a fun class. And then right after we were done, I got, like I said, Danielle and Danielle's company had emailed about a similar offering for behavior analysts. And I said, damn it, I wish I'd waited 8 weeks to do this. And I could have done this one taught by a behavior analyst. Our class was very good, but it's not a behavior analytic class directly or anything. So in any case, we've been able to sort of talk about RPGs, talk about the research. Danielle, I emailed her immediately and said, what research is there? And she sent me just like this huge list. It was my summer vacation project this past summer, Danielle, to read everything you sent me that I could get online.
That was really the best, most comprehensive email I have ever seen someone send someone else. It was like, can I have a few articles? You're like, sure.
So it was great. It was so great.
And then on record, I'm proud of that.
And when it came time to say, let's talk about this, let's talk about the research, it felt like, well, I mean, I'm going to ask Danielle, who's been doing this for some time, so can give us some firsthand experience as to how role-playing games can be used in sessions. And you sent us the whole list of things. It seemed like it'd be rude to not ask you to talk about them, especially because you have like summaries and everything. So we're very excited to talk about a couple of those articles today, as well as to have Danielle share a little bit more about what role-playing games could look like and how they could be used in a clinical setting. So, Dana, why don't we start with only three. There's so many more. We'll give you Danielle's email address if you would also like to get a giant list of articles, too. I don't know if she wants to send it to everybody, but maybe.
Oh, I will.
She's got the list. What are you talking about today, Diana?
Okay, so we have 3. Can I pull this over a little?
Yeah, I can move my chair, too.
Closer. Okay, so we have 3 articles to talk about today. They include a scoping review of tabletop role-playing game, TTRPG, as psychological intervention, potential benefits and future directions by Yuliawadi, Wardani, and Eng, and that was published in Psychology, Research, and Behavior Management 2024. Also, therapeutic use of role-playing game, RPG, in mental health, a scoping review by Aranas, Vidwani, and Arajo, and that was in Simulation and Gaming 2022. And then we have an unpublished dissertation that's pretty often referenced in this arena. It's evaluation of a role-playing game to improve social skills for individuals with ASD. That was by Helbig. And 2019 was when it was unpublished. Okay. There we go.
When it was created.
Yeah.
Put into typeface. All right. So Danielle, why don't we start, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about yourself, how you became interested in using RPGs in your clinical work?
Yeah, well, I'm a private practice BCBA, and how TTRPGs have been a recreational interest forever. I grew up playing them and never stopped. I have several games going my whole life. It became a professional thing 8 years ago when I had a client who wanted to make friends, and we were trying to work on social skills, and just we weren't going anywhere. And he took me to a game store every session. He wanted to hang out at this game store, but he didn't feel confident talking to the people there, and not even really with me. But one day he just makes this offhand comment that, I wish I knew how to play Dungeons and Dragons, which is the most popular TTRPG that I play. So he's like, I wish I knew how to play that. And I'm like, oh, why not? I can teach you. Maybe it'll give us something to talk about, And it blew me away that rather than just giving us something to talk about, playing this game together completely turned our sessions around. And having that structure of the game provided just the antecedent arrangement that he needed to start to have some reciprocal interactions with me, practice some of those skills. We were able to add another player and practice with them and kind of move on from there. But that kind of planted the seed. And then I just kind of kept having experiences to try this out and see how I can shape an imaginary environment to meet the client where they're at. And has been really fun. I've used it in different ways, in different settings, and it's become this versatile tool in my tool belt.
Wow, that's so good. Excellent.
I can say that I hate games. I can say that I don't love them, but I can imagine how useful it is. Right. I have played some role-playing games, and I can imagine how useful it is teaching those specific skills, right? Because it's very safe. It's a safe place, right? And you're having fun. You're not like, oh, we're working. And I love.
Are you saying useful or youthful?
Useful.
Useful. It's probably both.
Yeah.
Well, anyone can play. If you've been to an RPG convention, there's a lot of old people there too,
Yeah,
so
but I can imagine
hard.
Yeah, but I can imagine it's very useful, right? And I love the idea of it, although I don't love playing games. I love the idea that could be very helpful, right? In setting up situations where you could really target specific skills and something that someone loves to do, right? You said that they really wanted to play D&D, and wow, what a better way to, there isn't a better way to use motivating operations than something that someone already wants to do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a huge benefit of it is the social validity piece. Clients tend to love it and parents tend to love it, at least if they're the ones that are wanting to do it.
So Danielle, for folks, the listeners are probably pretty familiar with, RPGs, because this isn't like 1979 where people might not have known what an RPG is. However, I do think there are a lot of distinctions, and even in some of our scoping reviews that we were sort of looking at, we'll be discussing and pulling a little bit from in this discussion, there are distinctions between types of role-playing games. We'll talk a little bit about role-playing games versus something like, say, gamification, right? So these aren't all, the same term. But do you mind kind of doing a quick TTRPG, definition for folks who sort of just hear, oh, you mean Dungeons and Dragons, as if like that now explains the whole thing?
Right. Yeah, I'll give you my definition from my head. There's a whole bunch of different articles. People are trying to define them, but what what I would say is an RPG is some game where you're playing as a character in some sort of fictional, usually fantasy setting, and you and the other players pretend together and collaboratively tell a story. The TT part, when it's a TTRPG, is added when there's some tabletop gamification elements. So some rules and dice, tokens, something like that, that gives it a little more structure and sets up some engaging contingencies. And the cool part about, for us as clinicians and educators, is for most TTRPGs, the players usually control one character, and then there's a game master. And I usually just say GM, so you'll hear that, GM or Dungeon Master, DM for Dungeons and Dragons. And the game master controls the environment, which, the antecedents and the consequences and everything that's happening before and after the character's actions, which you can imagine gives clinicians some power to put in just the right stimulus prompt or saliency or just whatever that client needs, just with their languaging as we collaboratively tell this story together and act out the story together.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And so when we talk about something like Dungeons and Dragons, that's the most popular because it is the originator of the role-playing game as we know it today. And really the difference, I think folks might be like, well, is everything a Dungeons and Dragons? It really comes down to what is the content, what's the fantasy world, as well as some of the differences in the rules. Like I know, Danielle, you like a lot of the rules when there's like a lot of good rules, like they call it crunchy. For folks having the crunchy rules, like lots of little rules. Like I know you showed me that system called Draw Steel, which had a lot of little extra rules for combat, which could be very cool, but doesn't have to be that way. What would you say are sort of like the breadth of RPG systems out there that either you've seen in the papers or you've used with clients when you've been looking for systems for using RPGs in clinical work?
I mean, the breadth of RPG systems out there is huge. The breadth of RPG systems used clinically is primarily Dungeons and Dragons because it's most popular. I would not say it's the most inherently set up to be used clinically. There are, like you said, simpler, not as crunchy games that could be better for that. There's also a lot of unpublished dissertations of people creating games specifically for a therapeutic setting. There's a few there's a few things out there in the research and that people have done, but Dungeons and Dragons does tend to still be the most popular clinically too, just because of the popularity it has.
Well, that's true. But the other systems, I know, like for me, I'm much bigger fan of RPGs that have more rules light systems, and the focus more is on the collaboration and the storytelling, the inhabiting the character that you play to solve puzzles and do problem solving. And I always play a character. I don't care if I'm the barbarian who's supposed to not know very many syllabic words. I always end up being like, let me try to talk my way out of this problem. I don't want to use my axe to kill anything, which can be nice in the RPG framework, though I suppose could be a little bit limiting with clinical work. You do have to railroad things a little bit just in order to focus.
Violence is not the answer.
Yeah. Let's kill everything. Oh, well, now we're not friends. No friend skills.
Dungeons and Dragons it's a monster killing game. Like the rules are for slaying monsters, which is it makes it so when people do use it clinically, if you're not doing a lot of combat, the rules are actually pretty rules light for not combat things. But the game is structured for combat, which is, I don't know where I was going with that.
I did not know that, actually.
That it's not just all fighting?
No, because anytime I ever talk to anyone that plays D&D, they always tell me about the journey that they're taking. Right? They're like, and we walked this far, and we met these people. And it's never about, and I slayed this monster. It's always like, and we did all of these things. So maybe,
but you look at the rules, these are the things you can do, and they're all combat related.
Mm-hmm.
That's
but
true.
I think our culture now is we want to tell stories, and we want to tell meaningful stories, and that's the system that's still popular, and that's the culture, and we're putting those together, even though there are systems that are more story focused. I'm on a quest to find my new favorite system for, not combat focused.
Well, I was just going to ask, are there other games that y'all like to play or would recommend?
I personally am on that quest still. I liked Rob's Bison system. I thought that was fun. The Dungeons and Dragons that I use clinically is a very simplified version of, which for me, it gives them a little bit of a behavioral cusp of, you've learned some of the rules of Dungeons and Dragons. You can now go to any game store and have a community. But
true. Yeah.
we're not teaching clients all those crunchy rules just to get to our behavioral role play.
Yeah. A lot of times I know when doing the coursework, and then even if you look at a lot of the Game Master kind of guidebooks, there's a real kind of breakdown in terms of when you're playing. There's certain rules, you're rolling dice when the outcome is potentially in chance. Maybe you will, maybe you won't jump across the pit or hit the dragon with your sword. And then you break down the adventure into either sort of like different encounters, which could be combat, which a lot of people like, but therapeutically not always the greatest use of time. There's the sort of exploring part of it, and then there's sort of the interaction part of it. And you can sort of mix and match them all. Like you could go into a dungeon and fight stuff or not fight the stuff. Maybe you want to talk to the goblins that you just met rather than just immediately kill them. Though, again, I think historically it's usually just kill everything. So sometimes new players do think like, well, there's a thing that doesn't look like me, better murder it. Which, again, maybe that's the goal of your session. Like, you know what? You don't have to attack the first person you see. It's okay.
And then do some debriefing and rule formation for their real life.
So in terms of systems, there's lots of great systems. Hopefully nobody out there thinks that Dungeons and Dragons is still tied into satanic panic stuff from the early 80s or Tom Hanks climbing in the sewers or whatever he did in that movie he was in way back when. But it's very popular. It's popular online. People like watching people play Dungeons and Dragons. I think, Danielle, the experience you described with your client of, I'd love to do this, does feel more and more like something you'd hear, as opposed to like when I wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons and it wasn't, does anybody want to? And the answer was no, or you're a loser. Like it wasn't as nice. Wasn't as nice a response. Much more popular now.
Almost anybody now who sees that I play this, they see the books or they hear me talk about it, immediately ask me to teach them. Like nowadays, everybody wants to learn, which is fun.
Yeah.
Is that because of Stranger Things?
Yeah, I think so.
Probably.
Stranger Things and Critical Role just shot it up.
Yeah.
I still don't want to. I'll never ask you, Danielle.
But have you seen my books, Jackie?
I have seen your books, and I probably have those books in my house as well. And I will never ask you, nor will I ask Rob.
Oh, you sure? I was going to write off the books. Then I was going to give them to you to write them off again on my taxes as a gift. You see, a double dip on that. No, it's not going to work.
I think I already have all those books. We've got a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
I know your husband does have a lot of stuff. I don't know. He'd only just play the new version recently, though. I think because you can play old. You can play the old 70s version if you really, really want to read a terribly written instruction manual. You can play the super old Dungeons and Dragons, which makes no sense. Well, so it's fun to play. Unless you're Jackie, it's a lot of fun to play. It's something that I think entices people in. You can bring what you like to it, whether it's more of the I want to fight things and have lots of strategy, or whether it's more like the way I want to play, where it's more about like I want to set a scene and then have people sort of talk and engage and then occasionally do rolls just, when it feels like it'll make the game more fun. Though I tend to forget, like Danielle, the Vicen system you mentioned is a mystery one. I tend to forget to ask people to roll, and if they're asking me good questions, I'll like just tell them stuff they need to know to solve the big mystery of the game, which I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but no one is quit and said I hate this game. So that's been good, I guess. But what are the actual documented values of adding role playing? So, role playing itself is not behavior analytic. I mean, I suppose you could think it's a little behavior mod in terms of like, well, the things you are good at, you get bonuses to, you get experience points for completing goals. So it potentially reinforces, monster killing behavior or helping villager behavior, right? But not really in that sense. So we have to think about it in terms of it's an additive to our other either therapeutic or skill training based outcomes. So, while certainly there are lots of folks, and Danielle, you described some clients who've done really well with using that system, using role-playing games as kind of whether it's a cusp or whether it's just the motivating operation to actually engage more with like the behavior skills training of it all and friendship skills. What do we actually know more globally as to the value of smooshing these things together, smooshing our clinical therapeutic skill training with role-playing games?
I think you mentioned role playing not necessarily being behavior analytic, but we use role play all the time already. Behavior skills training, we love that. We know that acting out an SD behavior relation in pretend can generalize over to our real life. And using this clinically, you're pulling from that strength, right? You are role playing if you're actually acting it out. And I don't remember the rest of your question. It was pretty long.
No, you're right. No, you're right. So you're right. We use role playing, but I think when we talk about role playing, you're right. We're really talking about it in terms of like, I just can't create the antecedent and the consequence that I want you to be experiencing so that you can engage in the behavior and strengthen that response because it's working with a client and the client's not here, or you need to learn the skill before you work with the client. Whereas when we talk about role-playing games, while those mechanisms are in play, there is that component of, and it's a fun game that is so potentially so far removed from the actual, friendship skill or the maybe cognitive behavior therapy skill or the acceptance or mindfulness skill you're say practicing. So when it comes to role-playing games as part of the clinical work, like what do we know in terms of what works, what doesn't work, what are the results of the papers out there?
And to narrow down the best place to go with this.
This might be a good time we can just look at our, the scope, because the scoping reviews, I feel like one of the themes that we talk about is it's a lot of description. There's some randomized controlled trials, there's some quasi-experimental studies, but there's a lot of, I did this thing and it seems good. And the reports were everyone loved it and felt they were better at whatever the skill was. But I mean, like where are you seeing it in the research? Like just kind of looking at some of those scoping reviews, like what are some of the areas this has been used and general results?
Yeah, the research is very all over the place. There is a lot of research in a lot of different places. People are very excited about this. And like you mentioned, Rob, that the theoretical piece is huge. There are a whole bunch of theoretical articles of people saying, wow, TTRPG has the same structure as group therapy, or wow, the 3-term contingency, ABC, is right there in a TTRPG, or psychodrama, or whatever. There's a lot of theoretical things. There are a few preliminary experimental things, and I don't know if we want to get all the way into it right now, but there's some promising experimental things, and then there's the fact that the research is all over the place. But some of the things that are coming out more consistently as a benefit is the social validity piece. There are a lot of studies seeing higher social validity, higher engagement, higher assent. That can be really huge for if clients need that kind of antecedent motivating operation. And then there's what the research usually calls psychological safety, but is basically just this rule-governed, discriminative, deck-dick perspective taking of, this is the game context there then, this is my character there, not me here now, which can help make clients more comfortable to contact something aversive or sensitive and kind of have that psychological safety of the game separation to start. Those are the two biggest things that are coming out in the research. But a lot of the research is, the other thing that's coming out in the research is we did this and we saw improvements in this skill, but it's not comparative. There's not a lot of like, oh, what if we would have done treatment as usual? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you want more into that. I know you had other questions about that later, but
no, I know. I think it's a good start, and I know, for you as someone who's been using this more and more. I mean, are your kind of like anecdotal benefits, like the things you're noticing with your clients, kind of mimicking the same things? Like you're hearing a lot more. That was so great. What a fun time I had at session versus a sort of like, yeah, I did the greet friend skill 50 times already. I'm done now.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't even know how you would even get this into research, but what I see in practice is just like you mentioned, the narrative story, this ongoing narrative part it's more immersive and it seems more like real life, even though you might be slaying dragons. It seems more like real life that we're going through, it's not, here's this random scenario, let's do BST, I'm a bully, react to me. Great, you did what you did what your therapist told you to. It's, I am living out this story and now there really is a bully and it's more immersive that way. And you might be able to have delayed consequences and things that narrative piece feels very helpful to me. I haven't done like reversals or alternating treatments thing with my clients, but that feels really helpful anecdotally. And then also the gamification piece, having the way the game is structured, that it gives as a game master full environmental control. That if you are buying into this game, you are buying into that I am the environment, and what I say is. Which that environmental control piece can be pretty helpful because I'm not having to follow the client around and contrive things. I just say it and it is so.
Mm-hmm.
So can I ask just a general, for people that are like me that don't play role-playing games and don't really know how it's set up, do you come in with like an idea of how the game goes? Right? Do you have like a beginning, middle, and end of how you think people will get places? Or is it like controlled by the game and what people do? Or do you have like like an idea of like, okay, we're going to go on this quest and at this village, there'll be these types of monsters, or I don't know.
Yeah, usually you come in with an idea, you come in with kind of a plan, but you're not, the players control the characters and you just control the environment, which as behavior analysts, we know we can still guide the game where we want it to go using our consequences. But it is a collaborative storytelling piece.
Thank you. I never knew. And I never wanted to ask because I never wanted anyone to think I was interested.
Nah.
So actually, Jackie, I'm going to play. You could come this Friday.
Hi. Do you want to be a BCBA? Also known as a board-certified behavior analyst?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Massachusetts to get your graduate degree, just minutes outside of Boston.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education, dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years.
And our 2022 graduates had a 92% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy approved fieldwork placements, ethics mini handbooks, PhD levels professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland if interested.
And don't forget, our program is accredited by the Association of Behavior Analysis International, or ABAI, as a Tier 1 master's degree program.
Don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu.
regiscollege.edu.
One more time, www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there.
Bye.
Hey everyone, sorry to pause our conversation with Danielle Yang about TTRPGs and behavior analysis, but I wanted to remind all our listeners that ABA Inside Track is ACE and QABA approved. By listening, you're able to earn 1 learning credit. All you'll need to do is finish listening, then go to our website, abainsidetrack.com. Fastest way to get there is to click the link in your podcast player. It'll take you right to the page for this episode, and it will give you some questions you need to answer, as well as some code words you need to enter. I'm going to give you the code words now. And the first code word is flour, Flour. It's an ingredient for baking and such. For you can't have an RPG without a baker character. I mean, you could, but you probably want to have one. Make the world feel lived in, right? With flour. All right, let's get back to our discussion of TTRPGs.
I think that you hit on something important there, which is it can be really hard to manufacture, authentic feeling opportunities in BST if the role play is really short. Because everyone knows that you're just practicing. They know it's not a real scenario. And mostly they just want to get it over with because role play is quite aversive, I think, to a lot of people, even though we know that it is beneficial in the context of BST to do the role play piece. But it takes on a whole different element, like you're saying, when it's this long-term role playing that you are going to do in a Dungeons and Dragons or something similar. And it doesn't feel the way it does in BST when you like are forced to do like the little mini role play. It feels very different and very much more real. And so I think if you have a client who what they are trying to work on is something that's maybe more problem solving type of area, right? Or some more in-depth like interaction between, negotiations between other players, right? Then these types of role-playing opportunities are going to be really much more beneficial and likely much more closely aligned with what they would be doing in a real life scenario than just like the straight up BST role plays that you might see in other contexts. So that's a really interesting point I hadn't thought about.
And it builds this, like you're coming from a context of dense reinforcement. We're playing a game, not immersive. We're going to do a role play.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And voices are optional, but, recommended.
You mentioned something, and I know it's in some of the scoping reviews and in some of the other papers that you sent over the time we've gotten to know each other. When we talk about the benefits, certainly just the fact it's a game, even though the BST of it all might look exactly the same of like, I'm setting up a situation and you must engage in this, and then you'll get feedback. The format of the feedback might look different. I think there's just something very cool about maybe like the psychological safety that goes into practicing in the role-playing game context. It seems a little similar to, say, choosing to play like virtual reality training simulators of like, this is fun and it'll still potentially, teach me the skill. Are there other things that you see as kind of like big benefits to why you might say choose, I'm going to use TTRPGs in this session versus I'm just going to do, my BST plan, or I'm just going to do some feedback and more social reinforcement?
I think you summarized most of them already. The ongoing narrative piece, the increased engagement, maybe, if you need more engagement from a client, the psychological safety piece. Also the structure for contingencies. If I'm struggling to find a way to capture something, it's pretty easy when all I need to do is language. But really when it comes down to, when is this better than treatment as usual? That's the research question that I want answered that people aren't doing because yet. People aren't doing yet. Please do it. Because especially looking at behavior analysis, I can't tell you how or why or when this RPG structure is better than however else I might decide to structure my interventions, because I'm not doing, I'm only doing, it's working for this client. So I, do their treatment and discharge them. But there are a few like comparison CBT things out there, but really not a lot of comparison studies that I really like to see, because it seems awesome for me as far as like the actual breaking down the comparison between the two. There's not research on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, I'm not even sure like what that would look like exactly, because some of it does seem like, at least the current state of the research is clients seemed interested, so we did it this way. We saw results. Right. Let's move on. So I guess there's a question of like, would you really need a comparison study? Because it's not going to become prescriptive.
Sadly, you always need a comparison study.
I know.
And under what conditions would the RPG be more effective than just BST, right? Because hypothetically, the RPG might be more time intensive for the practitioner. They might need an extra training than the BST, right? But if it's going to be ultimately more effective for all the reasons you said, like psychological safety, right? It's more realistic, it's longer, then you would want to do that before a BST. I'm into it. I got this. I don't want to do the research, but I would love to read it.
Well, I mean, I guess some of the comparison might come sort of in the generalization too, because I know in the scoping reviews, there was some discussion of the idea, and I think, Danielle, you put in some of the notes, the fact that you can capture, a lot of Stokes and Baird generalization, or maybe it was in the helping dissertation.
Helping, yeah.
How
there's
much
there's no train in hope. I love that.
No, because you're setting up multiple exemplars. You can train loosely throughout the RPG scenario, and you're in control of every aspect of it. You don't have to go find the scenarios. You don't have to go do. But if you were to compare, Danielle, like what might that look like? Like multiple baseline of like, we're doing each encounter teaches a skill, and then after the encounter, I'm going to make you do BST, and we'll see if baseline goes up. Like, what do you think?
I'm not a researcher, but I think I'd have to do like across behaviors, like multiple baseline across behaviors or something, or alternating treatments. but I'd love to see BST, random BST scenarios versus ongoing RPG BST, or like
Yeah.
graduated exposure guided imagery versus graduated exposure guided imagery through an ongoing RPG, and I don't know, is it going to make a difference in skill acquisition period? Is it going to make a difference in skill acquisition when there are delayed consequences? Is it just the engagement and the psychological safety, the social validity, and the generalization? Is that better or worse? It feels like it gives me all of those things with my clients, but I'm not doing reversals.
Right. You probably couldn't do a reversal, right? Because you couldn't unteach a skill. But wouldn't it be fascinating to see generalization in like problem solving when you you were problem solving about like something vastly different that would not happen in the world. You're like, should we kill this dragon? Right. And then you're like, oh, should we buy this milk?
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's the same question, but you're asking it in a different way. So I just think that would be so cool.
The way it allows you to get multiple exemplars.
Yes.
It's just like the spectrum of whatever the stimulus class is and response class that you're trying to connect, you can get that whole spectrum pretty easily in an RPG.
Right. In a way that's natural in the RPG. Right. It doesn't feel forced. Oh, I just love it. But I don't want to do it, but I love it. The idea of it.
I think by the end it convince you.
Yeah, you might be convincing me. Maybe I'll have to like creepily sit in a corner while someone plays.
Yeah, Jackie, we've never really gotten into the just why you don't like games. It's just sort of I just don't like. Are you just sitting there like I'm engaged in this and every second is torture? Is it like that kind of a feeling?
No, I think usually the games that people want to play are really long and like I don't really have 8 hours of a day that I can just be like, here it goes. And and usually like when I've been prompted to play like Settlers of Catan, right? That's a long game. That can be long, right? Long for me, right? I usually lose interest. So that's the big problem is that the length I don't really have, maybe when I no longer have a child or hobbies that are my own. Or
when she's grown up.
Yeah, when I'm grown up. No, when I'm grown up, maybe. We'll see.
So Danielle, kind of thinking about, your a treatment package. Like I'm going to use TTRPGs. Let's say it's client driven perhaps. So, whether there's something that might be better is semi-irrelevant. You have something that could provide the same skill. The client is asking to learn in that way. So there we go. How would it be different than, to do the TTRPG session in your package than say I'm just going to directly reinforce certain behaviors? Like I guess maybe we're at the sort of like, what does it look like to do this? What is a session like? Kind of part of the episode.
I'm trying to think of something that we haven't. I think we already kind of talked about. It's a pretend you can contrive anything.
I guess.
Yeah, like maybe laying out sort of the details of it. So like, we talked about a lot of the benefits, the things that could be in there, but what might it look like? I mean, actually, maybe
I do have a question. Like, would you sort of design what the campaign is going to look like based on the individual client and what you perceive as their needs, and what would those types of needs be? So what's an example of that?
Yeah, designing the campaign is secondary to the designing the behavior plan. So you have your client and you have, this is their target behaviors. This client is needing to learn to tact and react to emotions.
Okay.
So I think a TTRPG is going to be beneficial because they're interested, or it'll increase their engagement, and I'm already doing it, and whatever. I've decided to use a TTRPG. And now I need to develop that story to provide lots of opportunities to tact and react to emotions. There's got to be situations that puts the client in multiple different emotions. There's got to be situations where NPCs are in multiple different emotions. And those are my functional pieces that need to be in the story. And then it really comes down to training loosely. Grab some of the client interests, grab some sort of trope, because when I play recreationally, I will spend hours in between sessions planning this cool epic story for my friends.
Yeah.
But that's not a behavior analytics service. I'm not going to spend that kind of time on clients. I take my behavior plan. I maybe get a broad idea of, oh, well, this trope, might work good, or this movie I watched last night, let me reskim that, or, of the broad idea of the story, ask what kind of story the client's interested, kind of have them shape that with you.
Yeah.
And then just train loosely, wherever it kind of goes, however you could fit those trials in. I like the idea of crafting this beautiful story that's going to be a metaphor for the client's growth that they're going to remember forever. But in reality, we don't always have that kind of time. And that's probably not the best use of my time as a behavior analyst. Does that answer your question? Is that helpful?
Oh, yeah. That's great. So you have the behavioral objectives as a main focus of the session, and then you're just using the RPG as a means sort of to make sure that you're getting chances to practice and address those skills that you're building.
Right. And you mentioned what it looks like, but that could be totally different depending on the client. Like I've had groups where they come for an hour and a half and we review, hey, how'd you do with your skills at home? Great. And then we play for an hour and then we talk about it afterwards and then we send them home. And like, it's the main focus is practicing in the game. And then afterwards, setting up some rule formation and homework plans for using the skills at home and things. And that's one way to do it. But there's also, I'm doing comprehensive, autism services and I'm with you for 30 hours a week. And one of our activities we do is we practice the skills in this half-hour gameplay. And then we go practice those same skills, out doing whatever else we do. There's a wide spectrum of ways to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
And follow-up question, do you tend to do this one-on-one or have you done it in a group with multiple clients?
Both. I would advise...
That's a whole other...
Yes. I'd advise new people trying this to try one-on-one first, because just as behavior analysts, we look at the one and we want to functionally analyze their behaviors. I think a lot of people get into this and they're like, yes, groups, but it works one-on-one and it's easy one-on-one. Mm-hmm. I think the groups are fun and they add that extra social element that can be very beneficial, but it doesn't have to be. It could be either way. When I do groups, I want to make sure they have similar goals so that the story, I can provide all of the trials that they each need. I did try once having just a group of kids who were the same age and they each had an RBT and they each kind of fit their own trials into the story, and it's not as smooth.
Yeah.
And Danielle, you usually have, like, in terms of the logistics of a session, you've certainly got goals. The client has goals that you're putting into the story. And so you're making that part of your plan. And, you mentioned having RBTs. When you have RBTs, are they usually helping with the, the running the game, or are they more sort of doing the data collection so that you can focus on, continuing to craft and maybe make some slight changes to the game based on noticing, clients are getting disinterested. So I'm going to move this encounter up a little bit. How does that work break down in the session? Because I know for me, the idea of running an RPG doesn't seem that hard. The idea of doing a clinical, sessions with a client, not so hard. I've done that for a super long time. Putting them both together, I feel like I'll just kind of do half of both and neither of them particularly well. So like, how do you, is it just you become fluent in both skills over the years? Or is it more of you just have to structure it in a way that allows you to treat it like any other session, just with these RPG elements?
Yeah, I think both of the things you just mentioned there at the end are important. Make sure you are fluent in the game first. So like if you haven't ever played an RPG, make sure you are GMing recreationally, learning, because GMing is its own repertoire of skills. That make sure you could do that first. And then once you're fluent in that, it gets to the point where the games, like the rules kind of fade into the background and you could focus on the story. Once you've gotten there, then it's easier to take the next step of having the story and the rules take a backseat while you focus on therapy. And at that point is, you mentioned you're good at both of them, but you don't, when you put them together, you do both halfway, right? Mm-hmm. Do the game halfway. Don't do the therapy halfway. Yeah. When it comes down to it, you're in your clinical session. Right. And if you're fluent in this game, you can use it to facilitate what you need it to use it to facilitate for, but it should be working for you. Mm-hmm. And if there are things that are part of it that are getting in the way, they don't need to be there. I like sharing the example of a lot of BCBAs have had the experience where they try to teach a client to tolerate losing a game. and they play Uno or something, or they play, something they've never played before. And I don't know if you guys have ever done that, where you've walked in on an RBT, or you yourself have tried to teach a client to tolerate losing, but you can't win.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like,
This is me. This is totally me. It was Hi-Ho Cheerio. Do you guys remember Hi-Ho Cheerio?
Oh, Hi-Ho Cheerio.
No, there's too much randomness
is
to
like
Hi-Ho Cheerio.
the
That's
seventh
terrible.
Circle of hell. Yeah.
And
Shoots and ladders. That game could go right.
I hate
out.
Shoots and ladders. But for Hi-Ho Cheerio, I was like, okay, we're going to tolerate how to lose. I even set it up so it was like halfway created, because this takes so long. Hi-Ho Cheerio takes so long. So
Yes.
they already put things around, and I lost every time. And the guy's like,
The basket kept spinning, getting the spin of their basket dump out. Ugh.
so
wrong
in that
game.
case, the game is, you are not fluent enough in the game. The game is not serving your contingencies. It sounds like that's a random game, so it might not be a good one to choose anyway.
Yeah, it's a spinner. There's no way to. You'd have to cheat, and then it's like, I'm teaching you that I'm cheating, so I can teach you how to lose.
I was young, everyone. I was young. I was a bad behavior analyst at one point. We all learn from our mistakes. Don't use Hi-Ho Cheerio. Don't use it.
Or
Yeah,
war.
so-
It just goes forever and ever and ever.
Structure the game system so it's supporting you, and be fluent in it so that you can use it.
There we go.
Mhm. But say in the D&D session, you could make a lose because it could be something that there's no way to get over. Like you don't have the right sword to hit the monster, or you don't have the item you need, or they're impervious to whatever attack you have. So you could put in failure after failure after failure if you really wanted to, and then judge, are they using their skill of, maybe doing breathing after they lose, or do they have a mantra that they're going to instead of going right to screen? Like whatever kind of the treatment plan is for that, you can program it more frequently, and in a way that is hopefully not as annoying as just, well, we played that game for 40 minutes and then you lost. We got one chance for you to not be mad that you lost,
One trial.
and it didn't go well. Well, I'm not playing that game again, so
And there's probably simpler games than TTRPGs, like if that's your only goal, and I can't even think of any off the top of my head right now, but, games that you are good at, that the client is not good at, right? You are fluent enough, you can use it to teach them. But yeah, it's definitely something you could use in a D&D if you're looking for the response generalization in lots of different, exemplars.
Mm-hmm. So just to make sure that folks get a chance to kind of see what a session could look like, especially around social skills, because I know for most folks out there, if they're like, this sounds interesting to me, like you said, Danielle, they have to make sure they can play the RPG first. And then many BCAs are probably going to be using TTRPGs as an addition to, say, social skill training versus some of the other work, like using it for, CBT training or ACT sessions, which there's been some research there. I know the Scoping Reviews did a lot on CBT, all with computer RPGs. It seems like there's this Sparks game they kept mentioning in one of the reviews. And I was like, oh, is this a fun game? This game sounds boring. I went to their website. It looked really boring. Like it didn't look like what we were talking about.
That one was made
Here goes
by
our
therapists.
sponsorship.
Yeah.
That's
Therapists
the
may not be the
problem.
best game masters.
We've got
Or
these
game creators.
therapists trying to make serious games that aren't game designers, and that's why everyone ends up using Dungeons and Dragons, because at least it's fun.
Right.
If it wasn't made by a 40-year-old man in the 70s, it's no good. No, plenty of great new systems. But yeah, some of those more kind of like CBT, like you mentioned, serious games. That the idea of it's like this game was made just to do this, like Math Blasters. This is a serious game to teach you math skills.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be
The
fun.
kids always know. They always know
Yeah.
when it's just an education skill.
Yeah.
It's like dressed up as a game.
The Oregon Trail is the exception that proves the rule
Yes,
on the
right?
serious
Or
games.
Square One TV, if you guys remember that.
That's not a game.
No,
That's a TV.
I'm generalizing.
Okay.
I knew they were teaching me things, but I was very entertained by
Okay.
that show. So I would make an exception there as well.
Oh, okay. All right. But I'd love to kind of dig a little bit into Helbig's kind of dissertation, because I know as someone who has run a number of sessions yourself, Danielle, what in this is good? Like if you were to sort of describe it, like the elevator pitch of what went on in that, how they used their system, what did you like? What would you add on, sort of knowing what you've learned through your own experiences, and a dissertation just being, or any paper being, a snapshot in time that can't, do as much extra stuff? You mind just kind of giving us the quick summary of it, and then talking about what you liked, what you didn't like, to give people a sense of that, what a session could look like with the goals.
You want me
and
to
all.
summarize it?
You don't have to summarize the whole thing. I just more meant in terms of like the structure.
All 100 pages, please.
No, come on. It's a dissertation. I mean, the key component. I'll kick it off. The key components are a number of clients who are working on skills. They're working on greetings. I think responding to greetings. Oh, I just looked at what the other one was. Taking feedback. So they had the social skills they were working on, and the goal was to have a game that allowed opportunities. And if you use the skills, so there was a BST component. I mean, this was probably if you're thinking of like your first time using, like when I think of my first time, if I were going to use it, it would be this cut and dry of like, first I do my BST. This is how we're going to say hello or respond to greetings. Then I'd have my adventure in which everyone would have multiple opportunities to say hello to different clients. And then based on their success or not success, they would get feedback, either positive praise, or they would get some sort of direct reinforcer. In the case of this game, this was a bespoke system, although it wasn't too dissimilar to some of the draw steel, where it was sort of like you succeed and it's just a matter of how well you succeed. It was like 1 or 2 was like not very well, and 3 to 4 was really well, and 5 to 6 was a super success. And then the reinforcer was just, if you use the skill correctly, your next roll, you got a benefit. So it was like, instead of 5 to 6, it's like 4, 5, and 6, I think, or 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
The best outcome in the game. So you're not really getting very much outside of just, it's all game mechanic related. And then they'd run the session, they'd take data. Then before the next session, they do generalization, where they just hang around for a bit, let the kids hang out, and then see, did they use any of the skills? Which, while very basic, it was nice that they had that component, because so many of the other research articles I know you shared or that were in the scoping review really didn't look at, did anyone use these skills outside the context of the therapeutic session? So even though this was, the 10 minutes before the therapeutic session, it's still better than nothing. So kind of in that component, like, what would you say are the components of like, yes, this always needs to be in there in some form or another? And then where are the areas that you think the Helbig paper, like, you could add more, you could make the sessions more robust or more, therapeutically rewarding for the client?
Yeah, I love that. I know she went through and she task analyzed the skills she wanted to work on and operationally defined them, and then was taking data on them. Perfect, right? We want to be doing that. Her game system also, it wasn't a real system. It was literally just, here's a character sheet. You could draw a picture of yourself and write about yourself, which didn't do anything for the game. And then the dice you mentioned, I'll tell you when to roll it and you see how successful you were. I think that super simple game system can be very helpful. If you want to try this for the first time, I think reading Helbig and copying what she did actually gives you a pretty good structure. What I would do differently in practice is mostly focus on the individualization and the function for the client and their real life. So like Helbig it was like an autism assessment of some kind. And then I think I assume that the skills kind of came straight out of that and they were teaching to the test, because the skills were kind of like, one of them said required to make eye contact and required to say please. And, I probably wouldn't fuss with that, but look at, what is the skill I really want them using in their life? And with that, I like to lean towards functional definitions. When I'm doing an RPG, I'm usually doing multiple exemplar training, right? And they're at the point that I want to be able to work on a lot of response generalization across the class. So she had topographical definitions in there. I'd want those to be more functional so I can train a little bit more loosely. And then, let's see, as far as the individualization for function, and then the real life generalization piece. Her final phase, which I think is just because this was a snapshot in time, like you said, her final phase was accurate demonstration within the RPG. That would never be my final phase. You need to see it in real life, but you haven't done your job.
Yeah.
I did like the way she did the probes. It wasn't just that they were there and they saw if they did it. Like, they were purposely presenting the SDs, that stimulus class, for the behaviors outside the game. And I love that when it was hey, you come and do this for an hour, they had a time that was, I don't know if Jackie mentioned this on air or before we started, but the social hour before you start playing a game. The clients came in and kind of just hung out for a second, and that's when they kind of snuck in a generalization probe. I think that's great. Make sure you're practicing the trials, the skills outside of the game. We call them above table trials too. You can be working on problem solving as your character, but you could also be problem solving together above table about the game. And then you could also problem solve above table about, the loud noise that just happened outside, or, making sure you have a lot of ways that you're working on your generalization. But other than that, I really like what she did. I think a lot of it could be copy pasted into practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the simple system. I would have loved to see a little more myself, just in terms of how the game mechanic went into the scenarios, or a little bit more practice with the scenarios. Because I do find, if you were say, I've never done this and I don't know a lot about RPGs, you do have to do a lot of kind of the guesswork. Like she gives like one scenario, I think, where they have to build a bridge to complete. And I don't know if it didn't really tie into one of the skills that the clients were working on. So I didn't know why that was her chosen example. Like I assumed she'd pick, I think there was another one with an enchantress they could be nice to, or they could greet the enchantress. Yeah. Like that felt like a bit, like I wanted to see it in action, because it did sort of feel like the example was, well, you could just do that. That has nothing to do with the, like, they're not practicing big bridge building skills. Like, why is that the one? So I'd love to see more of that connection. So, again, if there's, with further studies, I'd love to see more of that, how the skill plays out in the game. And that, I think that's the only thing I found that this didn't quite capture as well for me, as I've seen either, with other folks who've done this, or if I've, in some of like the coursework I've been able to do in the past. I would just like that.
I don't think I fully understood what she was getting at with the example in the paper, but she had another one in the appendices, and I liked that one.
Oh, okay.
But it was like,
I got tired.
Learning to ask for what you want or something, and they went shopping at a marketplace. And there was plenty of, you need these things, go buy them, and talk to different NPCs. And that I thought was a great example that was easily generalizable, easy to program common stimuli.
Oh man, multiple exemplars for initiate a conversation. It's like, you're in town. There you go. What do you want to do? You got to go talk to the innkeeper. You got to go talk to the shopkeeper, the king, the beggar who has all the secret. There's so many people you got to go talk to, and you have to role play it out. Well,
good idea.
Yeah. All right. So if folks are interested, this would be a good place to look as well. So Danielle, I know, it's hard we can't really do a full scoping review in the time we have of like all the stuff out there, though some of it is kind of missing, I think, what we'd be looking for to be like, and evidence-based practice, we've got all we need to know. So there's still a lot we need to learn about TTRPGs. So why don't we move into the dissemination station and talk about that? Oh, there we are. Well, see, Jackie, you role-played right there. You were the train.
I only role-play
Did we
trains.
make it? Roll the dice. Roll the dice. Let's see if we made it. Where did we end up?
I actually made it. We already made it. The train.
No, I'll come play. You can play as a train. I promise.
That would be amazing.
It's the Ticket to Ride role-playing game.
That's so funny. That'd be so boring.
That's another thing too, though. Like when clients have like a very specific interest, the way that you can just easily incorporate that in, and there's research that clients will, like, I can't even think of what article I was looking at, but there's articles out there where you don't, it doesn't seem like a client has a skill, and then you do it with their preferred interest and they totally have it. You could take advantage of that with an RPG.
Well,
yeah.
Sorry, dissemination.
Mara and Leon's a good example.
So speaking of articles and kind of what we still need to know, like, what would you say is next for continuing to explore how TTRPGs can be an additional means of, creating meaningful treatment packages for clients?
I think what's next is behavior analytic published studies. I started on it a little bit earlier, but like there's some cool stuff happening, but there's also and I think the both of those reviews that you guys read mention there's a bunch of cool stuff happening, but it's by very passionate, excited people who aren't checking all the boxes quality-wise. There's a lot of just qualitative interview studies, and there's a lot of, just a correlative thing without a lot of experimental control, or it's published in this random journal of gaming no one's heard about. And like you mentioned, a lot of it is CBT or education. There's not a lot of very strictly behavior analytic things, which is weird because environmental control and role play is what we do. So I don't know why we're not publishing on this, but
we're always so behind. Like,
I think it's screaming our name, but we're not doing it. So the biggest thing is just getting some stuff out there that is peer reviewed and behavior analytic, experimental, and it's time we move on from the theoretical papers. Is my thought.
Yeah, it is fun to read about concepts like bleed between characters in real life, but that's only going to take you so far in terms of, but what would I do? Is this worth doing? It could do this, but does it?
And what do I do to facilitate the bleed versus, and does this strategy facilitate the bleed versus, facilitate more of the distance, the alibi?
And we need a different term than bleed because I feel uncomfortable every time I talk about the idea.
Yeah,
wait, what happened in your therapy session? Bleed? Yeah. Oh, God.
It's just a generalization. Like, that's the term, but the RPG community doesn't use it, right?
Sure.
The term?
Right. They probably aren't calling it that. I feel like this is a really unique area, and the challenge here, and maybe this is why we don't have a lot of publications on it, is figuring out how to best demonstrate that there is a high EO to participate and therefore likely a high level of social validity for the overall outcomes of this, and then figuring out how to pull that over and really get the hard and fast operationally based data that we are looking for in our field, and kind of like having both of those pieces come together and then demonstrate that via published research would be really fantastic, because we already know that we can teach many of these types of skills that we've been discussing: social skills, problem solving skills, creativity skills, through a variety of formats, but we may be missing those other pieces that are harder to capture, right? The motivational components and the social validity components. And those both seem to be really high here, and we're just barely scratching the surface, right? You also referenced that this is a cusp skill for participating within certain communities. So if someone says, hey, I would really like to be able to go to any game shop on D&D night and sit down and play, that is such a valuable skill, right? Because then they can take it from here. They can start meeting new people and forming their own friendships and own communities around something that's really meaningful to them. Learning, DTT, BST, problem solving is not going to get you there. So there's something like really unique and valuable in like the package that this is putting forward, and it's going to take somebody's dissertation to get all of that summarized and out there. So anyone who's in school needs a new topic, this would be an awesome topic for you. And then the community's there, the technology's there, right? And the researchers are there, but they may not necessarily be in behavior analysis. So we just need to bring all of those components together to put out really kick-ass study.
Mm-hmm.
You said a bad word.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, Danielle, if folks are hearing this and they're saying, you know what, I kind of want to learn a little bit more, try this out. Certainly, they got the links to the Helbig dissertation is a good one. You also, for a sneak preview, I'm not sure exactly when it's coming out compared to this episode, but hopefully soon, have been offered to do kind of our own role play of a role play scenario. So we're going to get to sort of act one out in action. So that'll hopefully be fun for listeners. It'll be fun for me too. So it's my birthday month. So who cares about the rest of y'all? But let's say everyone says, no, I've learned all I want. I want nothing more to do with this topic. I'm going to learn it all on my own. What's step one for, I think you kind of mentioned it earlier, but if they're like, I want to learn more how I could do this, where should they be focusing their time on if they want to learn more about this?
They want to learn more about this.
Just the use of RPGs and, how they can implement TTRPGs into their own work, their clinical work.
I think the biggest... How much time do I have?
Good. You go till we're done. Yeah. We paid for this account. It will go until we tell it to stop.
I think there are two kinds of people I usually meet that want to get into this. And one is the people like me and Rob who love TTRPGs and are thrilled by the idea to use them at work.
Big nerds.
Yeah, you know what? It's reductive.
And the people in this group, you probably have a lot of competency running TTRPGs already, which is awesome. But the place that you really want to look at is your bias and the efficiency components, because us being so excited could put us at risk of shoehorning a client into this when there's a more efficient way, or it's not going to be, when it's not going to be the best for them, or there's a more efficient option. We also are at risk of spending hours and hours trying to make it so epic rather than really focusing on our behavioral analysis our service that we're providing. So there's the efficiency piece, and especially if you're already excited, especially if you're already fluent. And then there's the other group of people I meet is people who find this as a therapy tool first. They don't already have any appetitive relations with RPGs. They just notice that what they're currently doing with their clients, they don't have enough environmental control, or they don't have enough buy-in, or, and these people sometimes don't develop the same bias issues. These people are hopefully Jackie, but they're often able to see the game as the tool that it is and more clearly identify whether and where it'll be useful. But they have the drawback of they're not fluent in the game. So these people I would look at, get fluent in the game system, or get a professional who is fluent in the game system. And both groups, competence and efficiency is really, I think, what it comes down to getting ready to do this. You want to be able to have the game fade into the background while you focus on your contingencies, have the game facilitate your contingencies rather than just be something you're throwing on or in the way. And then with efficiency, even if you spend hours prepping for your friends, the story piece, you need to learn how to let that go and be able to be more random, do more improv, so that these benefits, like the benefits we're getting from it, are not worth 3 hours a week prepping a story. They're great if you're able to kind of get some broad ideas, focus on your interventions, and do that storytelling loosely piece. I don't know.
All
did
right.
I get your question?
I think that's a great breakdown. Either you kind of know how to do RPGs and you want to use it, so focus on. I know for me, I usually think about it similar to some of the things you shared, Danielle. Of let's start with an encounter. Let's start with an encounter of the skill. How could I make this? If I were going to do this with BST, what would it look like? Now I just need to make the much more fun and interesting version in world using, the characters that my clients have created. And I started there a little bit and made, a couple of little scenarios, and that's okay. That seems like a good place to start to, rather than I'm going to make, like you said, I want to make this be the most resonant story. And at the end, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe whatever skill we were working on wasn't in my repertoire. It always will be from now on, and I'll never forget this amazing adventure. But the reality is I probably can't write that good an adventure, and it doesn't necessarily lend itself. So I have to just focus on the skills. Or I don't know what I'm doing with RPGs, but it sounds cool. I'll just get some dice and we'll go from there. And that also not being a good idea. If you can't play with friends, or you're like, I don't want to play this with anyone else outside of the therapeutic session, maybe that's not, you either need to learn it even though you don't want to because your clients want you to learn it, or you should just try it a couple times and maybe you'll love it. And then it gets easier, like you said, Danielle, for it to fall back in the rule. I know for me, I hadn't played in years and years, so it's been nice to be able to play again and sort of get into the habit of, I don't need to know all these rules anymore. It doesn't matter. Are we having fun? Are we doing the goal? Which again, if you're doing it socially, is everyone having a good time? Which are some good therapeutic skills as well to pay attention to.
Well, I like that you mentioned too, it doesn't have to be, we're going to do a 3-month campaign with multiple intervention phases and 4 different clients. It could just be, we do tabletop DTT and you're interested in the idea of heists. Let's pretend that these 5, puzzles are puzzles as part of a mechanism that you're breaking into, and this toy is the treasure. Just do that today at work, and you could probably start to use some of these storytelling elements to increase your motivating operations for engagement.
Yeah, that's cool.
And if they finish the first puzzle quickly, that's all. You get a bonus on the next. I'm going to put the first 2 pieces in for, there you go. You got your experience system maybe to show their
some
proficiency.
Gamification. It's it doesn't have to be, I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it doesn't have, it could be gamification anywhere along that spectrum.
Oh, well, Danielle, thank you for making my birthday episode wish come true. And we got to talk about TTRPGs. It was a lot of fun, getting to talk more about the research, hearing about the descriptions of what it could look like clinically, to kind of get this information more and more out there. Because I don't know, it seems like if behavior analysis doesn't publish our nice comparison study, Someone will do it eventually, I guess, but why not? Why not us? Why don't we get ahead of this? Then everyone's got to cite us when they want to talk about the use of TTRPGs, you know? If folks want to learn more, is there a way that they can get in touch with you, the work that you've done, some of the trainings I know you've done for BCBAs? So when this comes out, so it sounds like the 25th you said, Danielle?
It's the 23rd, 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, wherever you are in the world, make that adjustment. But that's when my next course starts. So if you're interested in that, registration's at fantasyframeworkstherapy.com. And I run that course every once in a while. I also, my casual email is fantasyframeworkstherapy@gmail.com. I cycle through some other emails, but that's the one I always have open. So feel free to send me a casual email. I am happy to talk about this topic. I have a Discord server I'm trying to get going for behavior analysts who are interested in RPGs to have conversations like this. Can I put that invite in the show notes or something?
Yeah. I'm on the server, but I don't know how to actually share the invite. But if you send the invite, we'll put it right in the notes.
Cool. Yeah, you click on that invite and you'll get a message from me verifying if you're human, and then if you don't, just message me and then we can let you in there. But
what if you're not
in the
human?
Discord, my course, my email. I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
One more time, we want to say a big thanks to Danielle Yang for coming on to talk about her work with TTRPGs and the state of research on TTRPGs and how they could be used by behavior analysts in our sessions. It was a lot of fun. Again, a very exciting topic for me personally. I do fall into that category Danielle mentioned of I want to make it way too fun. And am I going to forget that this is for client purposes kind of thing? So it was a good discussion to review some of the skills that I've learned and read about. And that's good for all of you to get to hear that as well. Before we wrap up, I want to go to the last section of the show, and that is pairings. Diana, take it away.
Yes. It's time for pairings. Pairings is the part of the show where I tell you about past episodes you might want to check out if you found this one interesting. So we have talked about some of the things in this episode in sort of a variety of different ways in the past. That would include revisiting episode 76, where we talked about gamification, episode 155, where we talked about turn taking, episode 160, we talked about incorporating unique interests. That was with Tamika Meadows. Episode 210, where we discussed multiple exemplars. Episode 223, where we talked about generality and generalization. And finally, episode 290, where we discussed social validity assessments. You can revisit all of those. As part of pairings, I also like to recommend a snack for you to enjoy while you're listening here. So you have 2 choices of snack today. These are the snacks that when you go into the tavern in your game, these are the 2 things that are going to be available for you to trade in your coins for. So you could get a giant turkey leg. That one costs 2 silver. Or you could get a bowl of beef stew. It's hearty, it's warming. That one costs 3 silver. So you can choose.
If I use my charisma roll, can I get a discount if I succeed on a difficulty check?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. But the discount that you're going to get is actually just a bonus beer to go with.
Okay. That's fine.
It's a mead. It's mead.
Oh, yeah. Mead is not beer. They're very different.
I know. I changed it.
Okay.
I'm allowed to do that because I'm the DM.
You know what? That's fair.
All right. And that's pairings. Please enjoy.
All right. Thanks, Diana. And thank you all so very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to learn more about TTRPGs and their place in kind of therapeutic or clinical work, like we mentioned, we're going to have a bonus episode coming out very soon where Danielle's going to walk us through what a scenario could look like. So it's a more lived in experience. You also could certainly sign up for her class at fantasyframeworkstherapy.com. You only got about a week or so do it really quick if you want. And of course, if you're really, really interested, we do have a BCBA RPG game that happens every Tuesday or so. So if you're interested in just getting a chance to play some RPGs, you could always send us a quick email. Maybe we can find you a spot at the table if you want to try it out yourself. Diana won't be there. She was invited and promptly said no. And I didn't even bother asking Jackie because I know she would promptly say no. She already said it. I haven't even asked her. I know she said no already. Just thinking it.
All right. So I also forgot, and throughout the course of this episode and in my preparation of pairings, I was like, didn't I talk about the gamification article that I did that was designed around D&D? And turns out I did talk about that sort of on the show, but it was like a patron-only release that we sort of re-found in the archive. So that one doesn't have a number or an episode yet, but we were going to release it to everybody coming up as that's my bonus to come out.
Yay.
Yeah.
So plenty of ways to keep learning more about this topic. Some of them that we forgot existed.
Yeah.
Hooray. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening. If you haven't, please subscribe to ABA Inside Track wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us online at abainsidetrack.com, where you can find links to all of the articles we discussed, as well as to get CEs. Speaking of CEs, if you'd like a CE for this, you need to answer a number of questions on the website, but one of them is going to be related to a second secret code word. And then the second secret code word, Diana, you want to do that one?
Sure. It's emerald. Emerald is a green semi-precious stone that you might also have in your bag of holding, perhaps.
It's in the dragon's hoard.
Oh, that's where it is. Right. EMERALD. Emerald.
Emerald. All right. Some final thanks. Again, thanks to Danielle Yang for coming on the show. Thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro, outro music. Thanks to Kyle Sturry for our interstitial music. And thanks to Dan Thabit of the Podcast Doctors for his amazing editing work. We'll be back next week with another fun-filled episode. But until then, keep responding. Bye.
Bye.